KP, welcome.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Yeah, excited for our conversation. Um, so you started off, or at least before, doing what you're doing today, you were with a company called Aritzia, which those in Canada will likely be familiar with, and now more and more people in the US as well. But very much a growing fashion brand. I think you said about 2 billion in sales now, and you were in the senior leadership team in Vancouver, and now you transitioned. You're located in New Zealand, in Wellington, and you're the CEO of an HR consulting firm there called Humankind. So, just like back up, hit the rewind button a little bit. How did you go from having a senior leadership position in a company that ended up going public in the Toronto Stock Exchange, end up in New Zealand now as a CEO of a consulting business? And I know there's a lot in there, but just how do you kind of decide to make that transition?
Yes. So exactly as you said, it's not one thing. But personally, my husband is a Kiwi, so we were living in Canada and then made the decision to move. So it's a
Okay.
familiar story. And yeah, love being here in New Zealand. Um, and the transition from Aritzia to Humankind, there's a couple actually. So, as you mentioned, for any of your listeners that aren't as familiar with Aritzia, it is the premier fashion retailer in Canada, and really growing in the US. It's about 2 billion in revenue, has about 120 locations, and a really strong e-commerce business.
Mm-hmm.
Synonymous in Canada. Michael and I were just swapping stories about many days sitting on the couch while family members are shopping at Aritzia. Um, and but market dominance, the secret sauce behind Aritzia's infamous client experience was one thing always. It was the employee experience and the culture.
Mm.
And there I was responsible for a big portion of the company's revenue. And there were a couple of us in that position, some of my peers, that were very focused, from a people standpoint, and some took more of a product or merchandise lens to it. But for me, it was really all about the people. And
Mm.
so when I moved to New Zealand, a mutual friend introduced me to Humankind's founder, Samantha Gadd, and just said, you've got so many things in common. And it's really
Mm.
that intersection in the relationship that employee experience places on performance. And yes, we met and hit it off. And I was the first person to join Humankind that didn't have a traditional HR background. Yeah, but it all came from there. So I joined the team and then started working with Sam really closely on the business. Her and I have very complementary skill sets, and the rest is history.
I was on a podcast actually earlier today with a podcast host based in the Netherlands, and she asked me the question about, is it possible for uh, the CEO, or the person leading a consulting business to be successful if they haven't had quote unquote kind of consulting experience or experience delivering consulting. And I shared my observations on that most of the time, right, somebody in a leadership position, at least in a smaller boutique consulting firm, they tend to be somebody that has come through delivery, and they actually worked as a consultant. But you right now are a shining star of the kind of maybe an exception to that, in that you had a lot of corporate experience, right? Experience building business and so forth, and clearly a lot of human resources experience, but not necessarily as a consultant, right? You were internal, but today you're the CEO of Humankind. And I'm just wondering, what's your observation or just your thoughts around that, in terms of like not having the consulting experience, but still bringing very relevant experience to that role, for others who might be thinking about bringing on a CEO into their consulting business? Yeah, what are your thoughts on that?
And my initial thought is that shining star is probably a bit generous, but thank you. Um, yeah, but I mean, I think really favorably of it because I love my job, and
Yeah.
we're fortunate. I know that we're humming, but for me, it's about um, you know, building teams, right?
Mm-hmm.
We really start from the position of employee experience. we look at client experience, and then we also look at financial sustainability. So that's very much how we look at humankind. And those concepts are not exclusive to a consulting environment, right? If you're really understanding what your clients want, what problems need to be solved. If you have an amazing team of different strengths that are galvanized around a united purpose and share similar values, right? And then you understand the financial levers that enable investment into employee experience and client experience, and all of those things work together. It's all really transferable. And you got to learn a few new things. So
Yeah.
I've done that too.
Talk about that part for a moment. Like, what maybe stood out for you the most that you just did not have a very clear grasp on, or just you didn't have maybe the experience in, that you felt, oh, I have to spend more time learning this? Like, was there one area that was a little bit more challenging, or you just didn't maybe have, like, there was a bit of a gap there that you need to fill in when you assume that role?
Yeah. The first one that comes to mind, and I'll keep thinking on this, is like, even for my own leadership, thinking when we're identifying that we need to make a change or a shift in order to take humankind or our organization to the next level. I've had to learn that you do that through a couple of lenses. It's through people and the storytelling, and also we need to make it systemically. And I found that in consulting, that's really important. So because in my role as CE, I also have to come through the financial lens, the commercial lens. I'm intuitively thinking about those financial levers when we're making pricing decisions, when we're managing projects, when we're looking at which service lines are most profitable and billing methods are most profitable. And, sharing stories, and then learning that we actually have to build that into our systems so it's foolproof. Right. As well. And had to learn that the hard way, but we've really focused on that. And now we look at those things through both of those angles, both through people and storytelling and coaching and learning, and then building the systems that really enable that.
And Samantha, the founder of Humankind, did she have the role that you have today before you came on, or was there somebody else in that position?
That was Sam. Yeah. So she was the founder and CE, very much a visionary, a great thought leader, really in the world for employee experience. Yeah. And she's taking that, on a global scale. She led the world's first employee experience manifesto with a number of leaders around the world, which is awesome to participate in. And we work together really closely and just complement each other so well. She was absolutely the person to take Humankind to that phase. And then I was the right person to really professionalize the business and grow it to the next phase.
Can you talk a little bit about that, and not to put words into Samantha's mouth, but just from what you've experienced, what you've observed? And I'm asking specifically for someone who maybe has been running, they're the founder, right, of the business. They've taken it to a certain level. What was going on inside of the business that you think Samantha started to see or recognize that kind of helped to identify that maybe she wasn't, the right person to take the company to that next level, or that she wanted to make a shift? Like, what were some of those dynamics that people might want to be just looking for or paying attention to?
Yeah, I think, first of all, one of the things that works really well for both Sam and I is we both do quite a bit of work. Like, we're both, self-aware around where each of our strengths are. And she really has a ton of strengths that I don't as well. And so I keep saying complementary. And at Humankind, we're at a point in the business where we really had all of the ingredients, like amazing team, amazing brand, really early to market, about 6 years ago, leading employee experience when everyone was still really talking about HR. And all of those things. And just financially, the pieces weren't coming together. The results weren't there. And we needed a bit more focus, even, internally on some of our own pieces and how we were experimenting and really living those things. It's very difficult to be fully outward facing and fully inward facing at the same time. And so it worked because I was already in the business and, naturally looking that way. And so we just organically started to work together and on closing that financial gap and some of the internal pieces. And once we started closing the gap, it was like, oh, we all need to get playing to our strengths here. And so was one of the most pivotal things that we did. We kind of switched roles, and I took on the general management, and Sam was out in the market, which she's phenomenal at.
Yeah.
Another colleague, Jenny, do that. So, yeah, I don't know if that answers your
No,
question, but
it does. So what I'm hearing you kind of share is the business had grown to a certain level, a lot of really wonderful ingredients, but there were certain aspects of, you know, maybe some process, some system, some formalization or professionalization of the business that just there was benefits and experience that you had that by coming in, you could bring some of those things together. And now Samantha is, rather than focusing only on the internals of the business all the time, she's able to get out into the market more, or just kind of shine a spotlight on some areas that she really has a strength in, and probably formerly couldn't spend as much time focused on those areas as maybe she would have liked to. Is that accurate?
that's completely accurate. And originally, Sam was still in the business at Humankind when I was in the CEO role, and now Sam's got another business, Excellent, that she's working on. So Sam is a director. Yeah, so exactly, it was all of those things, and just us. It was just learning as well. Us being able to we really doubled down on our own internal employee experience, as you can imagine. Always quite good, but we really doubled down on that and brought together that employee experience, client experience, and financials so that they all work in unison.
How many people today at Humankind?
We've got 23 permanent employees, and then we've got a team of associates or contractors as well across the country.
So this is a very big difference. Like when you look at before at Aritzia, right, you're talking a lot more employees compared to 23, right? Hundreds, or I don't know what the number is today. When you talk about bringing in the focus around the employee kind of experience and the culture, what did you focus on when you came into this role and you saw the opportunities to make some adjustments and tighten things up a little bit around that kind of culture and employee side of things? Can you maybe offer one or two specific examples of like something that you did that was applicable to a company of 23 full-time people? Because oftentimes when you hear about culture work and values work, it's at a much larger scale, which for somebody who's, let's say, running a company of between 5 and 20 people, give or take, doesn't necessarily feel like it applies as much to them. So I'd love to hear maybe one or two things that you did that you have found to be helpful.
Yes. And also to be really clear, like there's so much good that was already happening. Again, it was just recognizing the next phase of the business, right? This is what's needed. So, so the first one I already mentioned was really getting each of us playing to our strengths. That was pivotal.
And so I don't mean to interrupt, KP, but can you elaborate on that? So when you say each of us playing to our strengths, like what might that look like in just a bit more detail?
The biggest one is kind of what I was just talking about, was like Sam really being out market focused, me bringing all those pieces together and really leading the internal employee experience and financial sustainability, and then building out some of those processes. And then we had one of our colleagues, Jenny Williams, who was really leading the client experience, and a couple of really strong directors, Charlotte Bates and Ilza, and a wonderful team. So that was probably the biggest piece, and that relates to the founder bringing in kind of CEO or other leadership positions. That would be my kind of our biggest learning, is reflect, like, what are you good at?
And did that also, sorry to interrupt, this is just very, I think, timely for probably many people, but did this also involve you, like, did this trickle down to other levels inside the organization? Was this a conversation that was had with every employee in terms of like, are you working on stuff that gives you energy and that you enjoy, or was it only certain roles that you saw, let's tackle this first and look at other stuff later? How do you kind of view that, and what actually happened inside as you work through?
Good question. We started at that level, and really, like, if you've got alignment at the top, like you need to have alignment at the top to have a chance at alignment everywhere else.
Makes sense.
Right. That's the aspiration, is like the leadership team is the first team to work towards. And so that was really the main focus. Always when we are looking at the work of our team, primarily client work, but even internal projects, we're always looking at people's strengths, the type of work that they're wanting to go into next, where they get that energy, and all of those things go into our resourcing decisions. Because if you've got people doing the work that they love and they're good at, that is the best outcome for everyone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, love that.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah. So when you said from a culture standpoint, it is, getting us playing to our strengths. The next big one was kind of this concept of expectations and reality. So for a while there, we were hiring really strong, at the time, we would call them HR, people and culture, now employee experience practitioners, and recognizing, particularly as we grew, that the consulting skills or attributes were also really important. And so as we were hiring and then onboarding and training our team, first of all, in that hiring process, we got even more clear around what the realities of consulting are and the expectations, and we were hiring for that. And then all throughout onboarding and our training and our learning development, not only are we building the skills in the services that we deliver, but in the consulting skills. Well, yeah. And then lastly, it's just like we're very purpose driven. We're very galvanized around our purpose. So really making sure, we spend a lot of time connecting all of our work to that purpose and the bigger picture on a regular basis.
When you say, yeah, connecting the purpose and something that you kind of bring up consistently, is it, I mean, you often hear like one of the big roles of a leader is to pretty much like drive the values and get them ingrained inside the company and, the purpose and the mission, and just almost be like repeating them over and over and over. Is that how, are you finding like it's something that you're bringing up on a weekly call with team members, or how do you actually bring that to life and connect that, and how frequently do you find yourself actually kind of repeating the same ideas to the team?
Yeah. So we do it every day.
Okay.
And
Every day, not even every week, every day.
yeah,
Yeah.
every day. We completely have our purpose baked into everything that we do. And yeah, so it's in the design. So we do organizational performance by design. That's what we do. And so when we're designing our own organization, right, we're starting with our purpose. Why do we exist? And for us, that is to bring humanity to work. And so when we're designing roles, we're very clear about how each role contributes to that purpose. On a weekly basis, we have multiple team huddles a week. We're reflecting on examples of how our purpose was lived. When we are planning and scoping work, we're considering how are we contributing to our purpose through the delivery of this work. When we're doing retros, which mostly happen, that's something that we need to get better at doing consistently, we're reflecting on that. Recently, we just had an all-team day, and we had clients come in and they shared stories, and them and I had couch conversations around the difference that our work has made, amongst other things.
Right.
But yeah, those are some of the ways that we do that.
So this is an area that obviously you have a lot of experience and expertise in, right, across the different companies. What do you see and maybe have experienced in terms of mistakes that, that people make when they're trying to maybe get that culture and the values and the purpose and just like everybody aligned? Where do you typically see people, kind of falling down or missing something that is really critical to being successful with this?
Yeah, I think first of all, just acknowledging it's hard. It's not, and that includes like ourselves. Like we have slip ups, right? And that's part of it.
Can you give me, sorry to interrupt, KP, can you give an example? Like when you say a slip up, what might that actually look like? And I'm not trying to throw you under the bus here, but just, I think if you can make that a little bit more tangible, like when you say a slip up, what might that look like?
Yep. The first one that comes to mind might be, this should be relatable to the audience. Say if we've got, a piece of work or a client that's actually starting to rub with our values, right? But there's other pressures around that. We need the work, or we want the work, or we're already so invested in it, or we've committed, things like that. There could be so many reasons. At some point, we need to make a call around alignment with our values. And yeah, I think there's times where we've let that go too far. And so we've had to go back and reflect on that and learn from it and own it. And it's something that we've gotten better at. But I'm sure that's relatable.
Well, I think very much. And how do you handle that? I mean, is that something that like in hindsight, people, I think typically the thought process there is, yeah, we should have dealt with this earlier. But then when it happens again, if somebody still is in that position where, yeah, that's like a really nice piece of business that would really help with our cash flow, what's your kind of, lesson learned there, or the policy of how you handle that going forward? And I recognize it's not necessarily always gonna be 100%, but is there a certain way that you kind of handle that situation going forward, learning what you've experienced to this point?
Yeah, I mean, the totally honest answer is just like, after a few years on the court,
Yeah.
you just learn at long term, it's not worth it, right?
Yeah.
Because people start to lose trust in leadership. And at the end of the day, like our team are so we're so lucky. Our team are so galvanized around the work that we do. But like people's own personal values and like integrity, that is just worth so much. And if it starts to impact like their personal well-being, at
Sure.
times, people aren't going to stick around for
Yeah.
that. And as a leader, I've had to learn that the hard way. And I mean, it's also just a values thing for us. Like we don't want that for our
Sure.
team, right?
Yeah.
And so in terms of how we approach it, like our team, lead the work with their clients. And so they're closest to it. So they have the most information.
Mm-hmm.
So they're, very involved in those decisions. Myself or a member of the leadership team, we have additional context, whether that be financial or context around some of the bigger picture that we'll bring in. And so whenever we're making a decision, we tend to look at three things. We look at the data and the financial, we've got those observations, and then we usually loop in to get some feedback from other people.
Yeah. I was thinking as you were sharing right now, have I ever met someone who said, yeah, I'm so glad that we kept working, with that pain in the backside client. And it's like, no, it's just never worth it. Right. How do you spend your day, your kind of typical day, typical week now in this role of chief executive, team of 24 or so full time? What's the breakdown of that? Like, kind of give me a sense of how you're spending your typical week or typical day.
That looks very different every week, right? Yeah, I mean, the three things that I really see my role as, it's first and foremost our team, right?
Mm,
Of course, we have a fundamental belief in the relationship between employees and performance, and a belief that work should be an enhancing experience, not extractive. And then like services is a people business, right? So I look at it as the team and culture,
mm-hmm.
strategy, and then financial. And we have an amazing team. And so the team really take care of our clients. I love spending time with our clients as well, building relationships, understanding what their challenges are, brainstorming, bringing those insights back to the team. And the three things that I really focus on are our team, finance, and strategy.
And for you, do you find like it's most effective to just kind of have that free flowing where every day or every week might be different? Or are you structuring at the beginning of the week, knowing, for example, every Monday and Friday is for this, and Tuesday and Wednesday is for this? Like, do you have a structure that you use consistently, or is it more free flowing?
I like me some structure. So I do block out time in my calendar. And the reality is, like just a small habit that is been game changing for me is, I block out working time.
Mm-hmm.
So, and Fridays I tend to do kind of more deep work and thinking time.
Yeah.
And then I make sure I actually block time aside for kind of each of those areas. And also, so I've got time that I can just be available for people to unblock things or soundboard or work through
Mm.
things together. And sometimes I'm able to keep that, and sometimes it doesn't happen.
Right.
But that system works well.
Yeah, so it sounds like, I mean, you just use the word system, and that's exactly what I was going to ask you, because it does sound like you have either some technology or structure in place to review performance and look at how things are going, and then adjust based on that. What are some of the kind of systems or tools that you find are just kind of critical to the business operating and to be able to run it in the way that you want?
Yeah, putting these in place was, in addition to getting us into the right roles to our strength, this is one of the kind of pivotal changes that we made. We currently use a New Zealand-based like time recording system and project management system, and we've got a plugin that helps us get insights, and we've really built that. We've invested quite a bit to get that, and that really helps us. So we're able to look at an organizational level, at a team level, individual level, service line level, billing method, et cetera, all the utilization margins, so that informs the decisions that we make. It's not only driven by that. And we are probably just going to switch over to a great other New Zealand program called Project Works. And I think you know Matt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so they've got fantastic capability around forecasting and resourcing and insights. A lot of what we've kind of custom built, they've got a lot of that capability, and we really value that.
Fantastic. Any other systems or tools that you're using right now that are kind of integral to the business?
That's the big one. We've got a good CRM system, and then obviously like our internal communication, right, around our knowledge management. We use the Microsoft suite like SharePoint and Slack, so it's pretty standard. But we have really deliberately designed like our internal operating system and ways of working. So we're quite clear about our rituals, our gatherings, how we communicate, how we make decisions, so that we use those to deliver on client experience and to deliver on our employee experience in a hybrid and distributed environment. So it's very intentionally designed around keeping people connected to purpose, still building, maintaining relationships, like removing the friction from people's roles, allowing growth and learning. And as I said, delivering, great client experience with the right financial outcomes too.
Were those already in place before you became involved in the company, or is that something that you brought from your kind of past experience?
Yeah, there were a couple that were in place, which we've really maintained. They're a strong part of our history that we also really like to carry forward. And we have evolved them so much because the world has evolved so much, right? And this is what we're helping organizations do. Like, a lot of the foundations stay, and a lot of, the world of work has completely changed, right? And those kind of old guardrails and old playbooks just don't work anymore. So we're constantly redesigning those with input from our team, testing, iterating. Like we're doing that as we speak.
Yeah. And from a marketing perspective, where is Humankind kind of finding that you're able to generate leads or create new opportunities? What's most effective and working for you right now in that department?
Honestly, our best is actually like through relationships.
Yeah.
It's like, and New Zealand has this factor in that there's like 2 degrees of separation here. But I mean, the world is relational. It's not transactional, right?
Sure.
And services, like you're working with people that you know and trust.
Yeah.
And again, I think that's, even more important than ever. So the work comes through our networks.
So I want to push you a little bit more on that, and just help me to understand, within that. So of course, relationships, right? Your network, but is there something that you or your team are doing to try and cultivate those relationships more, or like, are you doing some kind of events, or do you have a kind of consistency or frequency where you're reaching out to people? Like just a little bit more tangibly, what are you actually doing to work more with a network that you have, or to create those kind of conversations?
Yeah. So some of the standards, right, is we have, our social media, we try to be quite generous in sharing content really generously. So we put that out on our LinkedIn. We have a quarterly newsletter that we send out. And if there is a big change that people need to know about, like particularly in the employment relations space, or something that they should be thinking about, then we make sure that we communicate with all of our clients by email. We're just about to have an event here for our public sector clients where it is looking at leaders of public sector organizations across New Zealand, and talking about a couple of just really topical areas, and sharing our learnings and hearing from them and providing, hopefully providing some useful knowledge there. Yeah.
Is there anything that you've done or tried since you've been with the company that didn't work? Maybe there was a
Yes.
real goal. Okay, tell me about that. Yeah, what lessons have you learned from things that you've tried and they did not create the intended result?
Yeah, we a few years ago we started up the Employee Experience Awards in New Zealand, and the purpose was very much aligned with ours, which was to recognize, the best workplaces in the country. And it didn't work that well. And it was just kind of a combination, like for us to do it in a really meaningful way. We didn't just want to do an engagement survey. We wanted to really get in there and speak to each organization, speak to employees, and that's the right thing to do. And just commercially, it wasn't viable to be running a big program, like it's a whole event, and needed that and be running our consulting business, which is a very time intensive job in itself, as you know. And so, I think we underestimated that, and we're not doing that anymore. So again, it's so hard because there's lots of good about that idea, but again, you've just got to focus your ideas, and it was too time intensive.
I love hearing that, because so often people think that growth is a result of addition, but yet when you really kind of look at some of the most successful companies in professional services and other times even product based, it's through subtraction, right? It's like, what can you remove? And by removing something, it's easier to scale or easier to grow. So with the idea now of growing the business, taking things to that next level, it sounds like a big focus has been optimizing and improving, tightening things up, getting some better systems in place or formalizing some. What are you thinking about right now, or anything you're actively doing that you feel really has the potential to take the business to that next level? What's top of mind for you right now there?
Yeah. For us, we are now really looking at how we can take on larger and larger engagements. We've proven that we're able to do that. We're working in most of the large government departments and a number of the large corporates here in New Zealand. And important context is, a lot of boutique consultancies, our roots were in growth businesses. So those clients will always be very near and dear to our heart, and we focus there. And so, so now we're focused on working with more of those large corporates as well.
Yeah.
And where we started with really kind of like people and culture and employee experience as a service, as well as employment relations and leadership, we are now really unlocking the potential that exists within organizational design. And so that is, we're working with leaders to help shape and lead their organizations in ways that enable their employees and drive that sustained performance. So going beyond structure, where we're looking at things like structure and all the key people frameworks, but also helping teams really align to that future that we were talking about, cultivate leadership strength, design their ways of working. And again, a lot of the current systems that we have, that the world has in place or in the people space, just don't work anymore. They're not fit for traditional HR methods. And so we've got a ton of opportunity, and we're doing that with our clients, really helping them design through some of this complexity right now.
When you say, focusing more or just making adjustments inside the business so that you can work with larger and larger clients or take on larger contracts and projects, specifically, what have you needed to do in order to create that ability or that capacity, from a people perspective to a systems perspective to what your offerings look like? Can you just give a little bit more detail around what have those changes and shifts kind of been in order to be able to go out and win that larger business?
Yeah, you've touched on a number of them. So we're working quite a lot on our services right now. So, and we're looking at things in kind of a couple of ways. If we're doing the large scale transformation, we're really investing in our service innovation there. And so we look at that large scale transformation, and we're also going, sometimes organization, you just need like meaningful tactics in this one problem. And so looking both at that big scale and that other, because sometimes like transformation doesn't work. You need, like, our clients need meaningful change. So focused on that service innovation. We've talked about our systems that we have in place around project management and account management, just really intentionally scaling those up.
And have you needed to also either bring in more people or somehow create more capacity to have more, people available to work on projects, or what have things looked like there?
Yep. So we've been doing that over the last couple of years, and we've got just an amazing team now. And we've got a mix of both permanent employees and a really strong contractor base. And so that allows us to manage the flexibility. And we keep our contractors, we call them associates, because contractors just doesn't even feel right. Like they're very much a part of our team and integrated. But that allows us to just manage that flexibility. And then for them, they've got great flexibility as well.
Yeah. What's maybe one challenge that you've been dealing with inside the business, or maybe related to the business, that has bled over to personal? Just anything that you feel has been like a real challenge that you've had to try and work through or overcome as you've been, taking all this action inside of the organization?
Many. So the first challenge is which one?
You're right.
We talk about focus, right? Part of it is the way my brain works, and our team, we are all so excited about all of the possibilities. And so it's really choosing. And I reflect on that myself, right? I'll be the first person to go, let's do all of these things. And I think we can do it. And my team's also given me feedback on that. And so we've really tried to be more focused with what we're choosing to do and doing it well. And the reality is that's also like, it's an ongoing conversation. Like, we set them at the beginning of the year and then quarterly, and then you have to reevaluate them in the middle of the quarter. And frankly, like on a weekly basis, like context is changing and you're really reevaluating. So that's part of the art of leadership, is making those trade-offs and prioritizing. And then, then also just the reality, we've spoken a lot about the relationship between financial sustainability, employee experience, and client experience. And for many businesses right now, you're just, you're balancing all of those things. And, we're helping our clients to do that. That pressure is very real. And so those are things that we need to juggle as well.
This might connect to what you just mentioned, but is there anything that you're seeing in the current kind of environment or market in terms of buyers or clients cutting budgets or being slower to make decisions, or just any challenges in that kind of environment or landscape that you're having to navigate? And if so, I'm wondering if there's anything specific that you're doing that you think might be helpful for others to consider or explore themselves.
Yeah, so here in New Zealand, we are in an election year, and it's looking like we're probably going into a coalition, which means that those negotiations will take time. And one of the topics, the hottest topics of conversation, right, is around spend on government employees and consultants, right? And about 35% of our revenue comes from our public sector clients. And so that definitely has an impact on us. But again, we have really good relationships, and our team cares deeply about the work that we do. And so, we've been able to build up a bit of a war chest, so that if we need to ride out any of those periods, we can. But equally, we're doing things like, really just keeping in contact, helping them where we can. We mentioned that we're having that event to really share and use this time as an opportunity to do that, focus on our services, and then away we go. So it's very much about the long term.
Yeah. So that's long-term thinking. You're kind of planting those seeds, continue to give value, focus on the relationship. Is there anything that you've had to do, or that you're thinking that you may need to do on a short-term perspective to try and maybe manage some of the the choppiness or the uncertainty in the marketplace?
Yeah, I mean, like we're not in a position where we're making like big drastic changes or anything like that. But again, that was a very deliberate decision to make decisions throughout to manage our business so that we
Yeah.
can and recognize that that's hard to do. But yeah, I think it's really important.
Yeah.
Um, I mean, the other thing that might be relevant here is, you know, um, our work in culture and employee experience. Uh, it's needed in on one hand, it's needed more than ever because of these big shifts, right? And talent shortages and so forth. And also, if there are companies that are making cuts, it might be one of the earlier places that they make, right? Compared to, their accountants or, other
Right.
services. And so we're really focused on crystallizing the outcomes and the value and how we communicate that, which is difficult in our space. Some are obvious and the connection isn't as obvious in some places. So that's something that we're really doing.
Yeah, I mean, you're hitting on something really, I think that will resonate with many people, right? It's not like you're going in and helping a company to increase their sales, right? It's not as a direct kind of correlation or connection as that. Is there anything that you've done that you've found to be helpful in, further demonstrating the value or the connection of, this work? It's not going to increase your sales or profitability directly, but here's the business case for it. Just for those who might work in areas where the value maybe at first appears to be more kind of intangible rather than tangible. How do you kind of approach that, or any best practices that you bring into those conversations or use in your communications to the marketplace?
Yeah. So there's two. One is just explicitly making the links, right? So
Right.
it's so much more than this, but for us, it might be ability to attract people, retain people, engagement scores. So
Right.
we can do that and then link that to financial performance or other
Right.
levers that people might care about.
And I would
And
imagine that that might also then lead to, for example, if you attract the right people or retain, there's obviously a cost and data out there to show the cost of bringing in a new executive or whatever. So there's the business case you could make around that.
exactly, yeah.
Right.
And more, which is, obviously we're very excited to see. Um, Organizations are being held, by their boards to more than just financial metrics, right?
Yeah.
So we can really help in those areas, and more leaders are really understanding like the role that organizations play and the importance of these things. But yeah, so we're helping make those connections. But then the second is, the reality is a lot of ours is also qualitative, and so it's storytelling. So we're
Mm,
really focused on getting, the testimonials and the stories and the case studies in different
yeah.
ways. The thing I would love to do is to be able to get those. We're working on video right now, but to get like, video testimonials, I know there's some good
Sure.
software out there that does that.
Totally. Yeah. We've found, I mean, if it's helpful, we've done a lot with video testimonials over the years, and I always find it's just so great, especially you'll probably have an opportunity coming up when you bring some clients together for that event. If you have a videographer there, right, really good opportunity to pull people aside and ask some questions and get that. But yeah, there are definitely some different tools that you can use for video testimonials as well.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. So KP, I appreciate you sharing all this. We're going to link up to the Humankind website and all of your other details in the show notes at consultingsuccess.com. But before I let you hop off, I'd love just to ask you two final questions. The first is, you're obviously in a role that there's a lot going on, right? Any kind of leader or somebody kind of in the position that you're in with that number of team members, right? You have just a lot happening. Is there one or two things that you find are critical to your performance that allow you to function, to allow you to produce, allow you to really just be effective in your role in terms of like a daily habit that just helps you to either be centered or helps you to create more energy or just to achieve at the level that you'd like? Anything that kind of come to mind that you do on a regular basis?
Yeah. So many, but the couple of things are like, for me personally, but my health is really important to me, and that's a personal value. And
Mm-hmm.
so uh, even when I'm pretty busy and I'll be cranking, it has to take a lot for me to kind of miss a morning run or a yoga practice. And I know that, that's like
Sure.
biologically and everything. And then also it's a value. And so when I'm like in my value, then I feel good about that decision, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm starting out in a good space. And then the next is, yeah, really making sure I'm getting good time with my team. We've got an awesome team. So being able to soundboard and share ideas and work with them and be the leader that I need to be for them. But then also, lastly, is having a really strong peer network as well to share ideas, to soundboard, to challenge, and even like, yeah, share tactics. I've got a number of groups that I work with on different things, whether it be scaling, whether it be other professional services CEOs, where we're literally going like, what are you doing on these negotiations, or what rates are you doing, or what are you doing on here?
Yeah.
It's just really, really helpful because, yeah, you need to be able to lift out and share ideas.
Totally. All right. And then finally, one book that you have read or listened to maybe in the last 6 months or so, give or take, could be fiction or nonfiction, but it's something that you really enjoyed and you think others might find interesting as well.
So one that maybe the audience hasn't heard of, we're big fans of here at Humankind, is a book called Belonging by Owen Eastwood.
Okay.
Heard of it?
No.
Um, Owen Eastwood is a New Zealander originally, and he was part of the coaching team that really turned around the All Blacks, which of course are not only the best rugby team in the world, but one of the best teams in the world. But he really draws on the concepts of Te Ao Māori, which is the Māori worldview, our Indigenous group here in New Zealand, and really connecting to purpose, a collective us story, what's sacred, what's not sacred, and applies those to performance. And so now he coaches a number of premier sports teams and large corporates around the world in that space. So Belonging by Owen Eastwood, highly recommend. And I'm currently reading a book called When McKinsey Comes to Town. Yeah, so check that out for the consultants that are listening.
Go. All right. Well, I'll take a look at both those. Belonging definitely will go on the Amazon list right after this. So I'll check both of them. So KP, thanks so much for coming on here today. Really appreciate your time and enjoy the conversation. Again, we'll link up to the Humankind website and all of your details on the show notes page at consultingsuccess.com. So thank you again.
Beautiful. Hey, thanks, Michael.